have to write it in German. And it's absolutely crucial that I write capital letters, yeah, because in German, if I write those 3 words in capital letters, I'm sorry. Hören, verstehen, komponieren means, if I translate it into English, listening, comprehending, composing. But in German, if we write it in capital letter, all the words are as well verbs, nouns, and not just nouns in the first case, but also objects. So it means that hearing or listening and understanding comes to composing, or understanding what we listen comes to composing, or composing means to understand how we listen, or listening in composing means how we understand. Yeah? You can turn it up. And this is more or less what I assume, or what I'm in the last few years made up to a kind of project, how my work is produced, how I'm thinking my work, and also in terms of a kind of poetological, or it's not a theory which I'm building, but it's a kind of poetological, and it's also not a system, but it's a kind of track, yeah, where I'm working on. I want to structure this whole lecture as good as I'm able to by presenting you some music, presenting you some the very funding details, and then also I hope to go into some technical details, which then also maybe arise for you, not just into knowing something about my music, but also in some ways of having tools to maybe for your own composition or for analysis of different scores or whatever. Yeah. So where do I compose from? When I'm having this word, so listening, yeah, I am trying to think and to see what groundings, where are the basic constructions of what I'm listening to. And in special terms, I have to say, I ignore everything where I can put my compositional hand on. Yeah? So, for example, the biology, yeah? Because I can't compose your biological system. Yeah? But what I compose are different basic things, and what listening means, or how we listen, is at first a physical, a body-grounded thing. Yeah? We don't listen with our ears, we listen with our body, we listen with our hands, we listen with our total system. So if I have, for example, a sound, yeah, which goes up, I listen with my hand and I understand something going up with rising up. You know, it's a gesture. Yeah? It's not just now. It's a gesture. Yeah? So the body, everything, yeah, is one of the major basic systems we listen on. So when I compose, I have to put my compositional hand on my body. The second is that we hear sounds that are sharp, that are high, that are low, that are soft, that are loud, etc. So we have a system in our brain that connects an audio information to a tactile information. We can help it. Yeah? It's just like this. Yeah? So I can put my compositional hand and my tools, yeah, on this connection between a tactile information, let's say, so modern scientists would say these are weak synesthesias, as the first one were embodied perceptions. Yeah? And I can organize sounds being sharp, etc. Yeah? The third level is that we have, oh, it's a hard word to translate. Can anybody translate this word Empfindung? Sensation, yeah. So we have physical sensations, and what I mean with sensations, it's a complex thing which is not just low or loud, etc. It's a complex, yeah. This is maybe what we can also say, what we have if you look to nature. Yeah, these are complex physical, physical and also knowledge sensations. Then I also can put my hand on, and then we have our remembrance. Yeah? So we can't listen without remembrance. Our personal remembrance, our collective remembrance, our cultural remembrance. And this is also one of the groundings, and you will listen, or maybe you know some of my pieces, that I'm working a lot on what we remember. And then, and this is the next step, the next level of basic groundings of listening, is that we have that every sound, at least in my thinking, has a meaning, has a semantic impact. Yeah? It doesn't mean that it means go out here or attention, whatever, but it has a semantic impact, and some of those sounds have semantic impacts which are very, very open, like in signals, yeah, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Everybody knows that it's what it means, yeah, or gong, gong, gong. Okay, we can go into the theater. Others have impacts, semantic impacts that are in the field of, let's say, social musical things. When I make, yeah, you know what it means, etc. Yeah. So as in my composing, every sound has a meaning. Yeah? Even more, if there is a piano which is not used on the stage, it has a meaning. Yeah? Because it's our environment and it has a meaning. Not the last, excuse me? Oh, okay, yeah. Not the last, but one of the major points is also what then, does it work then? Okay, what you then hear maybe in this orchestra piece, that a major grounding of our listening is the space, the room where it happens. Yeah? Without the spatial impact, we could not listen to any sound. So each sound is crucially bounded to the space it is in which it sounds. And mine freedom as a composer is to produce sounds. Yeah? You will maybe hear that in this orchestral piece, which is in the subtitle called Agora Soni, maybe you know this Greek word of an agora, which means an open social space. Yeah? So I'm constructing different spaces by means of composition, and last but not least, and these are just those where I have my fingers on, the levels of basic listening groundings is the time aspect, of course. Every sound has to be projected in time. So how it is projected in time is the way we listen to it, or we listen to it in a specific way, how it is projected in time. Okay, this was a first introduction. Now we hope that we can listen to Fluchten, Agora Soni, a short extract from it. Message of those layers of our perception. And what I mean with understanding is that all those layers are synthesized in one moment. And understanding does not mean, in my sense of understanding, that it's an intellectual understanding with words and with, how do you say, phrases or whatever, you know. It's not about words, and it's not about thinking. It's that you understand something. For example, you understand a cup by that big, and you know you can grasp it. This is the understanding of a cup. Or you know you can put water in it. Yeah? And if you put water in it, the water goes up, and you understand that it's filled. This is the kind of understanding I'm talking about. So. What understanding then means is that we synthesize, just because we have no other chance, because we are what we are, all those different layers of our perception in this process of understanding. And as you can think, maybe you heard a little bit about this, as a composer, I can put my hand on each of those layers and transform it, work with it, and try to come to this, you know, different way of understanding or making my understanding different. Because this is the end of the whole thing, is to make understanding and listening to a different understanding and listening, which is not just based on what I know, but which is maybe going further. Yeah? And you can also say that those layers which I was talking about are, maybe if this word is a little bit too esoteric, excuse me, because I didn't find yet another word. It's a kind of energy layer of a sound. Yeah? So in each sound we have different layers of, let's call it energy. Yeah? This is the remembrance layer, the spatial layer, the time layer, etc., etc. Physical body-based layer. Yeah? And when I compose, I can transform each layer, because each layer then also transforms the others. In fact, I will now go to what it means to compose, and I will structure the whole thing in the aspect of what we call material, what we call maybe, or what I call contextualization, so putting materials to context, and then what I call, in German, it's the structure of followings. Yeah? When I'm a scientist, or if I would be a scientist, I would say it's the structuring of following. You can also say it's a kind of melodic thinking. Yeah? If you take melody as something which gets to a gestalt, there is no English word for gestalt, if you understand what it means. It comes to a gestalt, yeah? And this is sort of my perspective, what I'm looking for is some melodies under, you know, those, how do you call them? Quotation marks, yeah? But because melody is a tonal word, and so I put it under quotation marks, a kind of melodic thinking of grounded, non-tonal music. Yeah? In brackets, I have to say, any melody, for example, the Schoenberg wrote, that many composers write still now, are tonal. The gesture, so the body-based gesture of the melody is tonal. And so I'm searching for this basic non-tonal melody, and then polyphony, blah, 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 blah. We will come to this. Okay, material. Yeah? What I understand as material, it's not given sounds that I collect in the supermarket, but I have to form material. Yeah? I have to form the material from those layers that I want to form them. So I can form the material from my physical body gesture. Yeah? You heard, and I think it's quite clear where it's formed from. Yeah? It's from the physical aspect of walking. Yeah? It's quite simple. So you see, I'm quite maybe simple-minded composer. I do quite easy things. Yeah? And so my body forms material, yeah? As well as my body forms the different materials. Of course, you might see this, that this material derives from something that you also get or got from the past, because we have this big thing of which came from the Baroque music, this kind of Figurenlehre, which is called in English structuring figures, or, you know, from the Baroque music, where you have the figures for running, for everything, yeah? Which is not just based in the late Renaissance music and also in the music of the Baroque era, but it came to, and you know it, in the whole classical era, in the whole era of romantic music, especially when it's about sound pictures, yeah? And it's now in our brains as by means of film music, etc. Yeah? And this body, this physical layer of the material is also connected to our remembrance. What I forgot before is about the remembrance. When I'm talking about this Hören, Verstehen, Komponieren, so listening, comprehending, composing, I have a word which is a little, I don't know if you can understand it. In German it's called, or I call it the Hörstand. Yeah? So was ist Stand? Wie kann man Stand übersetzen? The proposition. So you know, maybe Adorno spoke about the proposition of material in the late 50s. Yeah? Which meant, where is the material? Yeah? And we can't go behind this material. I'm talking about the proposition of listening. So, where is my listening now? What? Or suggestion? Yeah. Okay. I don't know the word here. So, easily spoken. Where is my listening? Yeah. What is my listening form of? And this is where I take my base. Yeah. And to go off. So this is one material. Based on this physical aspect. The other is based on this high and low, and everybody does it, you know, you do it as well. You contextualize high sounds or shrill sounds, or, yeah, only thing is that I form, maybe you do it as well, the material from this sensation, yeah, from this very aspect. And that derives from our listening. Then I can just now make this. What you maybe heard also is that I take a lot of my material from our remembrance. You know? I think you heard it, there were just sounds that you know. There is no sound that I found. Yeah? There were even there were quotations which are a little sharky. This is, I can maybe then talk a little about this piece as well. It has of course, there is a reason for this, yeah? But our remembrance is the source, one of the major sources we understand, and those sounds that I get, yeah, from my remembrance, from my environment, is just, is a big gift that I get because we don't listen to the sounds. And one of the major things in composing, I think, is that I can bring myself, or maybe someone else as well, to again listen to something that I forgot that I could listen to. Yeah? So I want to listen to trashy material, to a material you're fed up. Yeah? So I want to find something new, and therefore I have to form the material out of my remembrance, and of course I make layers of remembrance of something. Maybe some of you know that I wrote quite 2 big pieces on just material of signals. So the sounds that we remember or we face every day that make our life. So you go up, you get up when you hear the alarm clock, when you turn on the radio, and make. These are all signals that lead us through our way. So this is the material, or a basic form the material of, and then what I also spoke about, the material has a semantic. So I can form material as under the semantic aspect. So I put alarm sounds into my material. I put maybe beautiful contemporary music sounds. Yeah, but I don't do it because they are not in my. So, in my, what I call Hörstand. Yeah? This is maybe different because I grew up when those sounds were still, something you had to fight for. Yeah? So I know that I really had to fight for the first sounds. Yeah? And then again I had to fight for the first trials. Yeah? So it was a fight. Nowadays I face that it's a little different because a lot of material seems to be just to be taken. Yeah? But I think one of the major aspects is that material has to be formed, and then we have a major aspect which I think is very, very important, that I have this list of materials now, or the words for the materials, and then I face an instrument. I face a piano, I face an orchestra, so the idiomatic aspect of the sound source. Yeah? And this idiomatic aspect of the sound source is very, very crucial for the meaning of what the sound is on this special instrument. So, and then you can imagine that there will be a kind of chemical reaction between one of those layers which I form the material, for example, a high or shrill sound, and the sound source which might be a piano or might be a violin. Yeah? And for example, the high shrill piano sound will be, in the next step, contextualized absolutely different to other sounds than the one on the violin, because it has a different physical aspect. Yeah? The high shrill piano sound has to be, you have to hit the keys. Yeah? On the violin, you have to stroke the bow. Yeah? So it's a different physical action that means that the contextualization of those sounds is absolutely different, even if the pitches might be the same. Yeah? And maybe now you see how these layers of what I was talking about, listening and the material, then divide the material in absolutely different contexts or meanings, because the same sound can mean something absolutely different in two ways of contextualization, or speaking about sound sources, when we talk about the idiomatic aspect of the instruments that are here. What you listen to the orchestra piece is, of course you hear an orchestra, of course you hear pianos and the sound sources of percussions, yeah? And then you also hear the sound sources of some, as I like it very much, lo-fi electronic with an electric guitar, etc. Yeah? And so in each of those sound sources build a special, let's say, agora, so collective and also spatial room, where I put different or material in. Yeah? Okay, I will now maybe go to a little other example, just another piece that I want to show you. It's that maybe also makes clear what I'm talking about. It's a quartet, and in this quartet it's called Sad Songs. Maybe you hear this kind of tactile and physical aspect of the material, and also the aspect of contextualization. I'm now in a very technical aspect of composing. Yeah? That means I have sounds, or whatever, material, I don't call them sounds, I call them material, and then I contextualize them. So I bring them together and let's say into groups, or in basic mathematics we can call them Mengendere. Maybe you know the word for Mengendere in English, the correct mathematical word, I don't know, yeah? But contextualization, so that one sound builds with another and a third, a kind of context. And I just wrote here some context, some levels of contextualization which I'm working with. Yeah? Because for me it's crucial that music and every art is not just based on one type of contextuality. This derives from my understanding of the listening. Yeah? That the listening is not based on one layer, but is based on many, many layers. And so I have the acoustic contextualization, so acoustic similarities contextualize a field of sounds. This is what is quite usual in music. Yeah? This is the main aspect of musical contextualization, which is more or less sometimes the only one, and then there is lacking a lot of others, which I named. The next one is the mimetic. So each sound, when I was talking about sounds, we can, not each sound, not every sound, but a lot of sounds have a mimetic aspect. So they are mimetizing something that we know from the word. Yeah? Like birds, like Sophio is size, you know, maybe you know this quotation. This is a mimetic aspect. What do we have? What did you say? Wait, whatever, you know. So there is a mimetic aspect, also the mimetic aspect of which you know from the opera bells. Yeah, a lot of our instruments, like the tubular bells, are mimetic sounds from our outer world. You know, and so this is the mimetic aspect. So how, and this is something very interesting for me, how something is mimetized. Yeah, we just don't mimetize in one thing. Yeah. I made mimetic rows where, for example, bicycle bell is mimetized by a bicycle bell, so the original, then by the sample, the electric sample of a bicycle bell, the same pitch in the piano of a bicycle bell. Now before there is the glockenspiel or cortales that mimetizes the bell, then the piano that, and etc. So you see that there are rows, yeah, of mimetizing this single element, and of course that it's absolutely clear that each element has its own life, its own individuality. Yeah? So if I contextualize, I do it in a way that it's not just the context. So I don't have fruits then, yeah? But I have fruits with a special, that come together in a special aspect, but it stays an apple or a strawberry. Yeah? So that the taste of each is then still available because I contextualize at the same time the other levels as well. The body grounded with gestures. I don't have to speak about, you know, a lot of this upgoing anabasis, catabasis, as they are called in the old rhetoric system, or the running gestures, etc. The sensational gestures. This is a little bit about this sharky thing in the orchestra piece. Yeah? And then we have what we heard now in the screen portrait, a very close or a very centric contextualization of tactile sensations. Yeah? So tactility in string music is not found by me that it's an important thing, because in string music you have the tactile aspect of the bow and the string, you know. And there are so many ways to contextualize it, and in this piece, what for me it was central, this tactile aspect, and I brought it to a skin aspect, you know, because on the string instruments we have this idiomatic aspect, that you have something of those two. You have two skins that have a tactility with each other. And so this tactile aspect of scratching and whipping, etc., was the main, or one of the main aspects of contextualizing those things. And then I will then present you also maybe a short aspect of another piece, the semantic aspect I was talking before about the alarms, and the alarm clocks, etc. So this is the very semantic aspect of a sound. We can also, for example, contextualize a C major chord in the semantic aspect, which means it's a quotation from some music, or the semantic aspect of something else. So I can make them, or I do make rows of sounds that are in the same semantic fields. For example, semantics of collective music understanding. Yeah.
Is it only real sounds, or you use
It's of course. So I use in this aspect what I was also talking about the mimetizing is that I use as well real sounds, so the bells, etc., the samples of sounds, and also maybe I don't use too much live electronics in a high-ended live electronics way. I'm also here. I'm quite basic. I'm a lo-fi type. So and you maybe also listen to or hear some just coming from CDs, some situations that are recorded somewhere. So reality, and of course the reality also of the instrument is the same reality. But of course it's hard to bring in the Gardiner into this room. So I have to do it on a CD, for example. To be clear. Just 1 minute. I will come to this. The situative aspect, each sound is in a situation. Is grounded. So if we hear some spoons and some things, we know where we are. And so I can contextualize those sounds. If we have an organ and a bell, you know what's happening. At least if you're grown up in some country as where Catholic churches, or etc. etc. So this is aspect, and then the spatial aspect. And these are contextualized to fields of material, and then the next step follows, which means the how do I put them together? Because now I'm still having just material. I didn't form. What's this? I didn't bring those sounds to in a special flow, because it's very, very, and you know it in your composers, it's crucial that one sound is followed by the other sound, and the second sound gives information to the first sound. So the first sound is not the same sound anymore if there is a second sound following. So I, as a composer, have to find structural ways to, out of my fields, and you can, then I have, for example, 1, 2, 3 sounds that are in this thing, how I make a kind of, and this is now the Gestalt thing, how I make Gestalten out of those sounds. So, and just to be also clear about this aspect of Gestalt, what is so fascinating for me on a Gestalt is that we have in a Gestalt the aspect of time. So I have material, let's say X, Y, and Z, that are a Gestalt, or I hope that are a Gestalt. And what the time aspect, then is that we have time passing by. That's clear. But at the same moment, those things are so related to each other, in a way that we at the same time hear them under a bracket, under a fermata, So they are coming to some kind what we call the long moment, or the moment. Yeah? So they are at the same time giving us information of how time passes, and they are present, yeah, at the same time. And this is what's so fascinating for me, that we get information of contextualized and structured sound about how time flows and and what is the presence of these sounds. Yeah? This is what's so fascinating. Yeah? And so I built up what I call Folgestrukturen, or following structures of following the material, or let's say easily traditional melodies, yeah? By means of going again back to how the ordering of the basic levels of listening. Yeah? And so the basic level, for example, of one of our listenings is that we can just divide two things if we are able to divide their difference. Yeah? And so, and I call it not difference, but I mean, I just write for me in very easy words, this is a logic symbol for non, yeah? A, non-A. Of course, you all know that there is no opposite to any sound, because there are no opposites, yeah? But it doesn't mean opposite. I have just this field, and there is one sound, and there is another sound, and there is a big difference between them, yeah? And so, just to have this in a field, this is my context. I take two sounds, and they are, let's say, opposites or far away from each other. So I make two sounds divided from each other so that each one makes the other present, audible. And then I hope they get a Gestalt. Yeah? If I put the next one, system, so these are a second Gestalt. This is what we call a synthesis Gestalt. Yeah? So that I have two sounds very far away, and one that has aspects of the first and the second. Yeah? It's also that this is all what our brain makes. I'm not so creative that I find things, you know. It's just I'm observing things and I'm putting it into my system. Yeah? And so, by means of this, I get possibilities to bring the materials, the sounds together, so that they are mirroring each other. Yeah? So that they are giving information to each other. Yeah? Which is then that sound A and sound non-A is like a chemical thing. Yeah? They are not the same anymore if they are coming together. And then if you have the synthesis aspect, it's even more like this. And then I have, maybe it's a little too short a time to bring all those aspects together. Yeah? But then you have a Gestalt, and then you're all composers. What does a composer? You bring the small thing to a bigger thing, to make this kind of Russian puppet, yeah? And hope that it works. And then, I have now here just written, you know, logic symbols, but of course it's about sounds, yeah? And I just tell you the very, very basic system of how I organize them, and then there is coming something, and this is also crucial for the composing, that when you bring those sounds together, you have to be, in a way, open and very, very sensitive between, I always think it's between my fingers, what those sounds do to each other. Yeah? So I'm constructing something, and then I'm like a child, and I'm looking to my thing, oh, what did I really do? Yeah? Because then the next aspect is I have to reflect on it, I have to take a position on it. Yeah? So what did I do? And this is what I call in the German word bearbeiten. So I don't know if there is a really English translation for this kind of word bearbeiten. Maybe you know one. Because in German we... Huh?
Editing.
No, it's not editing.
Process.
It's working on maybe. Yeah? What did you suggest?
Process.
Process is maybe develop. No, developing is also not correct. Yeah? I have to, because working on means that you take it in your hand and I can just say it with my hands, and then you're working on this material. You're stretching it, you're looking into it, you're maybe breaking it, you're winding it, whatever, you know. And this is not, also in the theoretical sense, we call it in English, what is called the development is in German called die Durchführung, which is something completely different in the phrasing, yeah? Because durchführen, so working on, is not developing, yeah? It has a different, for me at least, a totally different meaning. Maybe processing might be something, but my English is not good enough that I'm aware of all the context within this processing. And so now I'm on this kind of working on the material, and this is not just something which I want to do with my intuition or whatever, because I have to say I'm not interested, at least not really interested in what my fantasy is or my intuition is, yeah? Because I'm bored by it, because this is what I learned. And I'm working on what I have learned to transform it, to come over it. So I'm doing, the next step is I'm building the same thing that I did here with the material. I'm building working on structures, yeah? From, let's say, some material X. You don't hear this material in the music, yeah? But this is the transformation that transforms this sound, and this sound. And this line, which is usually bigger than the melody line, yeah, is built out of the same things as I talked before about the levels of listening, the levels of understanding, and the levels of material. Yeah? So I'm building a self-reflective system that reflects itself for means of leaving the system. Yeah? And this kind of what I call bearbeiten or working on is mainly is one of the major aspects of the music. I will maybe just talk about 5 or 7 minutes more, play some music, and then we have some time for questions. Is it okay? Because this aspect of working on is for me so important, yeah? That I'm doing something, maybe as a child, you know, building some Sandkiste is sandbox, yeah? And then I'm observing what I did, and I have to work on it because I'm not child, yeah? I'm responsible, etc. And this kind of bearbeiten leads then to some transformation, to the act that the sound that I have here in the process of the piece is changing, hopefully totally its presence by staying the same. Yeah? So you also see that I'm always thinking in paradoxical terms, because how can it be I can work on the sound by those then non-heard working on structures, yeah? Which are, for example, this working on structure can be a sensation, yeah? Shrill, yeah? And then I can have, for example, I can face that this sound is a, let's say, thunder-like sound on the Krankasse. How can this be shrill? And then my system gets nervous and then, okay, there is something possible in this paradoxical situation. And of course, you all know that it's possible. Yeah? We have our idiomatic system. We can just take drumsticks, yeah, and make a roll at the rim, and the drum gets into a high frequency, shrilly sound, you know? And this is just how I find out then my sound situation. And this kind of bearbeitung, that the music is not staying the same, that it's going beyond, yeah, is then also this, for me, major aspect when we are coming to what we call emphasis or emphase. Is it the same word, emphase and emphasis? Yeah? Or let's take this old word of emotion, yeah? Of that music has an emotion or moves something. Yeah? I'm not interested in reworking some kind of emotion. Yeah? But in the aspect when I'm working on the material, I have the feeling that this energy on working on, I don't know how to say it, there are open some pores of the skin of this material and something of an emphasis develops that I have no label for and I have no name for at the moment, because as you heard, I'm talking about things that I can label because they are my state of listening, my state of knowing, you know. And what I'm doing by all this big technical, or it's not so big, but it's this process is going to somewhere where I have no more a label for, yeah. And what I'm not talking about the aspects of the layers of material, that I do it not just in sound, but also in harmony, in rhythm, in gestures, in instrumentation, etc., etc. So in all the aspects that we have, and I hope that, for example, that we have this glorious trumpets, fanfares that you heard in the orchestra piece, yeah? That they are no more glorious, that they are no more non-glorious, that there is just something arising from these sounds and the contextualization and structure of these sounds, which appears to a kind of energy which is non-labeled. Yeah? And maybe for this moment I will give you one more example. One aspect that I just want to name here and not to go into details, that all my music that I'm doing is polyphonic music in the way that I have more than those at the same time, not always of course, yeah, but sometimes, out of which reason? The reason is just the same, that I have the same sound material seen from different angles and from different perspectives at the same time, so that I get the research on the sound material gets from different angles at the same time. So of course it's not polyphonic music as we think Bach is polyphonic, but worked and structured, it's polyphonically out of this reason. I would say, please, we have now at least 15 minutes. I thank you for your listening and feel free to ask whatever you want. I just wanted to say, it just came up today that there will be a guitar player performing or having a kind of studio performance. I think here on Thursday, about 5, you get an email, I don't know, just wanted to say, because he's doing some really hard guitar pieces, and if you want to come, you're welcome. We're making some kind of discussion, and maybe you then can also go into details on a certain piece, on a special piece, which might be interesting, maybe or not. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I have 3 short questions in the body. The first is, we heard your music through loudspeakers,
Yeah.
and you were talking sounds basically.
Yeah.
But you don't write electronic music, but you write music for instrumentalists. Does the human aspect, also what is the role in your music, the people who perform your music? That is one question. The second question is, the whole system you were talking, it was basically on sounds and sound perception. Is there a difference, or is there a similarity with visual perception, or are you counting on people closing their eyes during the concert? So you just want to deal with sounds. And the third has something to do with the first two. In the string quartet, you had the chords, and I heard maybe the cellist was giving like cues, and then there was what was it notated, or it was just a non-notated thing, and how this related to the answer of the question.
Yeah, I will start with the last one. No, it's not notated. It's this human aspect while in performance. Yeah, and I think you were talking about the electronic aspect. Did not do, besides some side works that were just research work, really, pure electronic music. But what I do is confronting the human aspect with some speakers. Yeah? So people performing sounds is very, very important, just because what we can notate is a kind of suggestion what a creative musician then makes out of it. Yeah? So I can notate a pitch and blah blah blah, and I can be very, very precise, but the ear and the ability of a musician to make a logic performance out of it is massively important. Yeah? And this is so I'm working for and with people. Yeah? Of course, sometimes also you have to work against people, because this is this wonderful struggle that we have now with this huge amount of really great musicians. Yeah? And you're in this happy and glad generation that you face wonderful musicians. Yeah. 20 years ago, it was a little harder to get a tonal sound. Yeah. It was really hard. It was a hard fight, but it was good. Yeah. And it was for me even easier than for Lachmann and for Stockhausen, etc. Yeah? So this is the maybe is it okay with the first two, the first and the third question?
So their role is important, or their role is to produce sound?
No, it's an intelligent and creative role as an interpreter of what my composition makes suggestions. Yeah? Because a composition, of course, can just be a suggestion for an intelligent and creative mind to work on and to make it to her or his expression of sound. Yeah? And then, of course, every interpretation will be will be one aspect. Yeah? And so for me, it's massive important. Yeah? And
the question was if
the visual aspect. Yeah. In those pieces where I don't work with visual aids, you can do whatever you want. Yeah? Because what I do is that a sound has a visual impact. So, and it has one. Yeah? We can get rid of it. It has a textual and a sensational and an impact, and so you can close your eyes or you can do whatever you want. Yeah? There are some pieces I'm also working on, where the visual aspect gets really important, or I have some also, this is maybe also due to an answer to the first question, I have some works where the instrumentation is as well kind of installation, so the instruments are ordered in a way that there seem to be an installation, and then there come human beings and make this installation living. Yeah? So then you see a human being working on guitars and working on an instrument. So the physicality of the players is then part of the piece, as well visually as well as audially. And there are also things where they make things which don't produce sound but rhythm, etc., etc. So, but I'm very shy in this aspect, you know, to come to a kind of visual thing, because it's very hard to come to a point that musicians do something on stage, and I want them to do nothing more than they ever did, because I'm just composing, and if I'm making something visually seen, to be visually seen, I want to see it as a composition, yeah? And not as a theatrical aspect. I'm not a theatre guy. Yeah? This is nothing for me. I don't know nothing about theatre, but I can organize movements that can be seen as non-sounding movements. I'm a musician, so I have to do it as non-sounding movements. Yeah.
Two questions. When you spoke about polyphony and different perspectives, these perspectives are those the list you gave in the beginning. I mean, are those perspectives an acoustic, sensational, tactile? Yes. So the different aspects under which you see some object is at the same time are different ways to perceive it.
Yeah. For example, I made this with this bike bell. Yeah. In a piece, I had this as a central aspect. Yeah. And there is one layer, the first, that makes a mimetic line. The second makes a semantic line. And the third makes a situative line. Yeah? So you hear the same grounding sound. This is the ping of a bell of the bike, yeah? In three different aspects of this material. Yeah? And it's always the same sound. And it means something different in the situation of a street, yeah? Than if it's in a mimetic row, where then it leads to church bells sometimes, maybe. Yeah? And so this is how I do it. Yeah? So that you have maybe not the entire But as far as our perception has the possibility to have different aspects at the same time of one element, of one sound element. Yeah, this is what I call polyphony. Yeah.
Have a second question?
Yeah. Of course.
And these lines,
Yeah.
or melodies,
Yeah.
are progressions inside one system from. So what you explained in the beginning about something and some an object and some object really different in the same field.
Yeah.
So those lines which happen then as polyphony are sort of going from one to the other.
Yeah. So not going from one to the other, but there are different forms of organization of the same context of material.
I know, because I remember from time ago that you gave these Latin these progressions of steps of how a sound object can be created.
This is how the post-structuralist composers or the serialist ordered the material, that they had different, that a progression as if it was a scale, but of course it was not a scale. This is what Stockhausen also wrote in his articles, yeah? And which is then also a little bit an aspect of the sound differentiation which Lachmann has in his what he calls sound families.
What I wanted to ask is, do you use the single steps as, I mean, do they always come in the order of going somewhere, or they become like 12 notes of an octave?
If you want to call it like this, they are the 7 notes of C major.
Okay.
And of course, the melody can be da 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 da, of course, yeah. But it can be also ya da 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 da, yeah, or ya da 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 da. So and these things, how I organize it, they are my organizing types of sympathy melodies, etc., etc. So this is a long list. Yeah. Yeah.
2 questions also. First one, how do you select your basic material? I wanted to ask actually, why do you want to like it? That's the question I'm really.
What?
Why do you want to say like that? So actually, because you're using it on a contextual view.
Okay.
And the second, I wanted to ask about the role rhythm in your because I always felt you were quite rhythmically aware.
Yeah. So the first question, how do I select my material? For each piece I have a kind of, let's say, theme, something which interests me, that makes me nervous. That is not, I'm not feeling so well because it has some kind of attention to me, and I'm not knowing enough from it. Yeah? One of the, so this was about, when was it? 13 years ago. Maybe I had the experience of listening to something which you all might know, the entrance of a march, of a marching band. Yeah? And this made me so nervous because, of course, marching, military, no, it's a no-go. Yeah? It's an absolutely no-go. Yeah? Ideologically, musically, etc. But there was an aspect where I couldn't resist that has a sound, it has an energy. Yeah? It's an interesting sound. You all know this, the snare drum. It's a massive, interesting sound, and then it's even intelligent because when you do this entrance, yeah, you have to, and then they enter the cymbals and the bass drum. So the sound of the snare drum is intelligently divided into a and yeah, the same thing which the snare drum does. So they make an analysis of their sound source, and that made me so nervous. Yeah, this aspect, and then of course the aspect of emphasis. Yeah, this brutality which is inside, and that's how I select. And of course, for example, for the string quartet, it made me nervous that this touching, yeah, has so that sounds touch, yeah, and then I had to step aside, and then it made me also nervous that I'm extremely fascinated by a picture, maybe from Titian. It's called Marsyas, that's the Discendo des Marsyas, I don't know the English title. So his skin is, what is it like? He has been skinned, yeah. And in the field of painting, you have the canvas of the body pulled off on a canvas, and this self-reflective system, you know, and of course these tactile sensations which appear then, they are for me the same tactile sensations that I have when I'm listening or when I'm seeing a string instrument. That made me extremely nervous. So, and this is how I choose my material with this bell, this bike bell. The signals that lead our day also made me nervous because you get a lot of information the day which you don't listen to, but you just react. You know, the alarm clock makes the little ones make good, you know, and you get up and you start your day. Yeah? And so sounds are making us doing something, but we don't listen to it. Yeah? And I wanted just to turn it around. Yeah? I want to listen to a sound which made me doing something. Yeah? And so I went to the signals, and then I just made lists, you know. I'm not so, I just made list, okay, which signals do we have? Bike bell, church bells, alarm clocks, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. Yeah?
There's a question about the rhythm.
The rhythm, okay. In the system, first thing in the system of polyphony, yeah, I didn't speak about something which I call the polyphonic axis. Yeah? That means that I don't have layers that just are like on a cake onto each other, but there is an axis. And for example, the rhythm is one of the axes. So if elements are together, if they are following in a metric system, or if they build up a rhythm, is one of the axes that I have. Then the second thing is that rhythm is also something which can be in one of those layers that I had here. For example, in the semantic aspect, is a rhythm, is a semantic rhythm. And so, in those semantic aspects, I take the rhythm as a semantic information. Yeah? And then, on this body-grounded thing, is a body, is a physical aspect of, yeah, which you had in the, you didn't hear the thing in the sad songs, yeah? You had this physical and semantic aspect. And then I'm working on this rhythm. And maybe you saw it, I'm a fan of exaggeration, because I think exaggeration is one of the main aspects. Yeah? So exaggeration in all directions. To some of you I said this, because I don't want to leave things as they are. This is not my job. I think the job of a composer is to bring them somewhere else, and so I just exaggerate rhythms, and this is the role of rhythm. That there is something, yes, that I'm not a fan of, let's say, just amorph rhythms. This has something to do with with my body, or maybe because I fell down the stairs somewhere, I don't know. Yeah? But this is something because, and if I have amorph rhythms, I have to contextualize them with different ones. Yeah? There are also big phrases where you don't feel any rhythm. Yeah? For example, at the end of this sad songs, yeah? Where rhythm is, time is, free. Yeah, there is no, of course it's rhythmically notated, but there's a different time aspect. And this is the other thing, that rhythm is one aspect of our perception of time. And so I have different rhythmic qualities that I organize. Some more questions? not. I don't know what's the time. Yeah, it's when does the concert is at 8. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah.
When you are doing, when you're doing your, so to say, melodies.
What am I so to say? What?
Melodies.
Okay.
You are opening ways from a bicycle bell. You go to a church bell, and you are opening new associations, of course. Are you not reacting in some certain parts of your piece to those associations? Because if you would react to everyone, then you would always be going to somewhere different.
Yeah, I would say, of course, this is what I then perceive, and this is what I was speaking about, that I then, if I see which associations arise then, yeah, that I'm a grown-up, and that I have to be conscious of those associations, and then I work on them. I don't even those associations, I don't let them where they are. Yeah? Maybe you heard there in the piece now, or also in the orchestra piece, there were some quasi-quotations of romantic piano music. There is an association coming up, and this association is coming right at the moment where some kind of the association of climax in. So I put two associations together, and then I work on this as a kind of fade out or a kind of reverb, and its successes succeeds onto a real reverb, so that the whole association then is transformed to a singular sound aspect again. So I try, I hope so, yeah, to also to get my fingers and my hands onto this associative aspect of music, yeah, because this is also, we can't help to have associations.
Is it then that your piece, you start with bicycle bell as your starting point, and then while composing you turn into another kind of hearing. You hear, okay, now I'm working around quotation of romantic music, and now I'm working with the idea of reverberation, and the bell is forgotten, so to speak.
Well, I think it's not so easy because of the polyphony, because I'm at the same time working on the bell and on the association. In this part, it wasn't romantic music, but it was a kind of, because I wrote a kind of, let's say, toccata with it. Yeah? So it's a different one, but it is at the same time. This is so important for me that I don't want to make an alphabet, A, B, C, D, E. I don't want to just go through it, you know. And this is why I'm writing polyphonic music, because all these aspects are at the same time in my brain, in my body, when I listen. And so I have to find a way to do it at the same time. Of course, I can't do everything at the same time. I'm not cooking now. Yeah? But I can have the impression of a taste, yeah? While listening and while speaking to you. And this is what I'm doing. I'm just not speaking. I'm giving you many, many informations with my hands. I'm giving you many, many informations with kinds of moving. Yeah? And this is what the sound also has to do. So we are composers. It doesn't do it by itself. That information that the sound transmits is the information that he has now given by the history. And what I'm doing as a composer, and what I hope is the sense in a way for all composers, is to grab this sound with all its information he has from the history and bring it to somewhere else, you know, and not just take it, okay, you have wonderful information of Bach and blah, 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 yeah, and come on, go to the audience. This is a little too, no, not a little, this is too less for me, yeah, and that's why I'm trying to do it at the same time, so polyphonically set. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I'm repeating too often, even too often. Yeah? And this has just the meaning that you reduce the material out of its context, yeah, and bring it to its, you know, that you just see what it is. Yeah? This is, so I use this, or I'm exaggerating in repetition for sake of bringing the material or the sound to what it is. It's not contextualized, it's just what it is. Yeah? And so this might be the sense of those. And of course there are a lot of other things arising through this repetition. Yeah. So I'm never speaking about dramaturgy, and I'm never speaking about, you were asking about form, and now we're back to this. Yeah? I'm not speaking about this dramatic aspect, because I'm speaking about form and dramaturgy as ways of working on the material. Yeah? So I don't think of this is a silent part. Yeah? I'm thinking of, okay, this will be the kind of section, maybe, if you say, where the material is reduced to a very, very low level, and so it's a kind of exaggeration on the minus degree. I'm not thinking about it's a silent thing. Yeah? So this is, and I'm not thinking in parts of this is a fast part, this is so, but I'm thinking in ways of working on the material. And of course, if you work on the material, there is a dramatic and a dramaturgic aspect arising, and then I have to react on this, which again comes to a kind of working on the material. So it's always this spinning around.
A very naive question. What do you expect the audience on the first impact in the concert situation of your piece? What do you want them to experience, or what kind of pleasure do you want to give them, or what?
I think just the pleasure to listen. Maybe. Yeah. I don't. I know. If you compose, you have to face that everything you do has a manipulative aspect. And my system and my complex system, all this, what you said, self-reflective system, is also here to avoid this manipulation, because there are too many informations or too many Bedeutungen, meanings, that there is a direct manipulation to somewhere. This is what I avoid. If listening is a pleasure, maybe that's the only thing that you sit or whatever you do, yeah, and listen. So I have to be aware of this connotation and at the same time to free it. And so you have both at the same time, the big connotation, and I hope so, that those sounds are free, that you just can listen to them, which means in my system or in my thinking that you can understand them while listening. Or you can listen to them because you understand them in any way, yeah? In this big field of what understanding could mean. Because I don't say what understanding means, and I still can't. Yeah?
It requires real active listeners.
Yes.
I felt like even 1 second or 5 seconds of the music actually require a lot of attention and a lot of very fast way of associating with some song.
Of course.
It's a very talking perspective.
Well, I would say it's also a kind of, why do I compose? Yeah? I'm composing because I want to have sounds that give information. Yeah? I'm not composing because I want to create a situation. There are composers from all over the world who know it much better than me. Yeah? I don't want to create situations because then you don't listen. In a situation, you feel good, and listening is one of the side aspects, you know. But I'm a little, modest in this way. I just want you to listen, nothing more. Yeah. And I'm not a composer who creates a situation. I don't want to bring you to a state of. I need the activity of natural perception, but not a special one. I think you are active. Everyone is so active from us while listening. Yeah? It's just not a situation where I put you in, but an active system. If you cross the street, you're immensely active, even more active than you listen to my music. Yeah? Because you have to be aware of so many things, yeah? To get all across the street. And this is what, yeah, I think we contemporary composers are not so gifted to produce music, because producing music, there are composers that they learn how to produce music. Each day a symphony. In Schubert style, in Shostakovich style, and so on, you know. They are so gifted, and it's such a craftsmanship, you know. And we don't, or maybe we have craftsmanship, yeah. But I'm not interested in this kind of production of music, yeah. And it's a research, and so I have to say, if I don't go for the risk that it's maybe not working, that's what I'm talking before, and if I don't have the freedom to say, okay, it's just nothing, I have to start at the beginning. Yeah? I don't feel free to be to make something that I could call art. Yeah? And so, yeah, I'm not interested in producing music. Absolutely not. You know, you understand this production turn of music. Yeah? I think some urgent questions, because otherwise I think the concerts, they won't wait for us. Thanks so much for staying here for so long, and maybe you can, if you come back.